Snow smothered Abernethy Manor, a grand Elizabethan relic isolated in Yorkshire's frozen hills, December 1935. Hercule Poirot, the meticulous Belgian detective, stood by the drawing-room window, invited by Captain Hastings for a Christmas respite. The blizzard howled, sealing the guests within. A piercing scream shattered the evening's calm, leading them to the study. Lord Abernethy lay slumped over his desk, a jeweled dagger in his back, blood staining the Persian rug. The French windows gaped, snow drifting in with footprints vanishing into the storm. But none returned. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mon Dieu, the killer is among us. Chapter 1. The blizzard's arrival. The snow fell in relentless curtains, cloaking the Yorkshire countryside in a suffocating shroud of white. It was December 1935, and Abernethy Manor, a grand Elizabethan pile perched atop a lonely hill, stood like a sentinel against the storm's fury. Its mullioned windows glowed faintly, as if the house itself resisted the encroaching darkness. Within its ancient walls, Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, adjusted his meticulously tailored overcoat and surveyed the scene from the drawing-room window. His small, precise frame seemed out of place in the vast oak-paneled room, yet his sharp eyes missed nothing. Poirot had accepted an invitation from his old friend Captain Arthur Hastings to spend the Christmas holidays at the Manor, the ancestral seat of Lord Charles Abernethy, a wealthy industrialist known for his iron will and questionable alliances. Hastings, ever the enthusiastic companion, had painted the visit as a respite from Poirot's relentless casework in London. "A proper English Christmas, Poirot," he had exclaimed, his mustache twitching with excitement. "Roaring fires, mulled wine, and no mysteries to trouble your little gray cell." Poirot, skeptical of such tranquility, had agreed only to humor his friend. Now, as the blizzard howled, he felt a prickle of unease, as though the storm itself whispered of secrets buried beneath the snow. The drawing-room was a study in opulence. Crimson velvet drapes framed the windows. A crystal chandelier cast fractured light across the polished mahogany furniture, and a fire crackled in the immense stone hearth, its warmth battling the chill seeping through the walls. The guests, a small but eclectic assembly, mingled with the forced civility of those trapped by circumstance. Lady Margaret Abernethy, the Lord's elegant wife, glided among them, her emerald gown shimmering like a jewel against the somber backdrop. Her delicate features belied a steely resolve, and her smile, Poirot noted, never quite reached her eyes. Victor Abernethy, the Lord's only son, lounged in a corner, his handsome face marred by a sullen scowl as he sipped brandy from a cut-glass tumbler. Eliza Thorne, the governess, stood apart, her severe black dress and tightly pinned hair lending her an air of quiet defiance. Dr. James Harlan, the family physician, puffed on a pipe, his broad shoulders and gruff demeanor suggesting a man accustomed to command. Hastings, ever sociable, chatted animatedly with a maid who darted about with trays of sherry. Poirot, sipping a tisane prepared to his exact specifications, observed the room with the precision of a watchmaker. He noted the undercurrents: Lady Abernethy's fleeting glances at her son, Victor's barely concealed resentment, Eliza's nervous fidgeting with her sleeve, and Harlan's watchful gaze, as though he catalogued every gesture. The air was thick with unspoken tensions, and Poirot's instincts, honed by years of unraveling human deceit, stirred restlessly. Lord Abernethy himself had yet to appear. The host, known for his punctuality, was expected to join them for pre-dinner drinks, but the ormolu clock on the mantelpiece ticked past 7, and still he remained absent. Hastings, catching Poirot's eye, approached with a grin. "Not quite the cozy retreat I promised, eh, Poirot? This storm's turned us into prisoners." "Prisoners, mon ami?" Poirot replied, his voice soft but laced with irony. No, no, it is not the storm that confines us, but the secrets we carry. And in such a house, secrets are never far from the surface. As if on cue, a piercing scream shattered the room's fragile calm. It came from the direction of the study, a low, mournful wail that sent a chill down Poirot's spine, colder than the wind outside. The guests froze, glasses poised, faces drained of color. The maid dropped her tray, sherry splashing across the Persian rug like blood. Hastings, ever the man of action, was the first to move, striding toward the door. Good heavens, what was that? Poirot followed, his steps measured but swift, the others trailing in a disordered rush. They crossed the grand hall, its marble floor echoing underfoot, and pushed open the heavy oak door to the study. The sight within stopped them cold. Lord Charles Abernathy lay slumped over his desk, his silver hair matted with blood. A jeweled dagger, its hilt gleaming in the lamplight, protruded from his back, pinning him to the chair like a grotesque specimen. Blood pooled on the desk, staining papers and dripping onto the rug below. The French windows behind him stood ajar, admitting gusts of icy wind that sent papers fluttering like ghosts. Snow had drifted onto the sill, and beyond, in the dim glow of the manor's lanterns, a single set of footprints led from the window into the garden, vanishing into the blizzard's embrace. Strangely, no tracks returned. The room erupted in chaos. Lady Abernathy gasped, clutching her pearls, her face a mask of horror. Or was it calculation? Victor swore under his breath, his brandy glass trembling in his hand. Eliza Thorne stood rigid, her eyes wide but unreadable. Dr. Harlan pushed forward, kneeling beside the body. "He's dead," he pronounced, his voice gruff but steady. "Stabbed through the heart. Been dead perhaps an hour." Poirot stepped forward, his small figure commanding the room's attention. "Do not touch anything, s'il vous plaît," he said sharply, his eyes scanning the scene. The study was a masculine domain. Shelves lined with leather-bound books, a globe in one corner, a decanter of whiskey on a sideboard. The desk was cluttered with papers, a fountain pen lying askew, its ink spilled like a dark omen. Poirot's gaze lingered on the footprints outside. "Curieux," he murmured. "A killer who walks into the storm but leaves no trace of return. Most intriguing." Inspector Japp, who had arrived earlier that day to join the holiday party, took charge with his usual brusque efficiency. "Right, nobody leaves this room until we've got statements," he barked, his Cockney accent cutting through the tension. "Hastings, help me secure the scene." Hastings nodded, but his eyes sought Poirot's. "What do you make of it, old chap? Nobody could have got out in this storm, not without freezing to death." Poirot stroked his mustache, his expression inscrutable. "Mon cher Hastings, the impossible is merely the improbable in disguise. The footprints, they tell a story, but not the one we are meant to read." He turned to the group, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, a murder has been committed in this house, and the killer is among us. I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth. But for now, tell me, who last saw Lord Abernathy alive?" Lady Abernathy spoke first, her voice trembling but controlled. "I saw him at tea around 4. He was in good spirits, planning to revise his will." Her words hung in the air, drawing sharp glances from Victor and Eliza. Victor snorted, tossing back his brandy. "Father was always meddling with that blasted will. Probably cutting me out again." His tone was bitter, but his eyes darted nervously to the dagger. Eliza Thorne, her voice barely above a whisper, said, "I saw him in the hall at 5. He seemed preoccupied." She hesitated, as though weighing her words. Dr. Harlan cleared his throat. "I spoke with him at 6, in here. He was upset about some business matter. Said he'd deal with it after dinner." His pipe smoke curled upward, mingling with the room's tension. Poirot nodded, cataloging each response. And the scream. Who uttered it? The maid, trembling in a corner, raised her hand. It was me, sir. I came to bring his lordship his evening whiskey and found him like this. Her voice broke and she buried her face in her apron. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the windows, were they open when you entered? The maid nodded. Yes, sir. The wind was blowing something fierce. Jap scribbled notes, muttering, blasted weather. No tracks beyond the garden, snow's too deep. Whoever did this is still here. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and the chandelier flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved hands hovering over the dagger. The weapon is from the Lord's collection, n'est-ce pas? A personal choice. And yet the footprints suggest an outsider. A contradiction, non? Hastings shivered. It's uncanny, Poirot, like a ghost walked out and vanished. Ghosts do not leave footprints, mon ami, Poirot replied, rising. But men and women do. And they leave lies as well. Lady Abernathy swayed, and Victor caught her arm. Mother, you should rest, he said, but his tone lacked warmth. Eliza's eyes followed them, sharp as a hawk's. Harlan lit another match for his pipe, his hands steady but his jaw tight. Poirot turned to Jap. Inspector, secure the manor. No one leaves until the storm breaks. And you, Hastings, fetch me the guest list and the staff roster. We must know who walks these halls. As the group dispersed, murmuring and casting suspicious glances, Poirot lingered by the French windows. The snow continued to fall, erasing the edges of the footprints. He closed his eyes, his mind already sifting through the fragments of the puzzle. A murder in a snowbound manor, a dagger, a trail leading nowhere. The game, as he often called it, had begun. Then from the depths of the house a faint creak echoed. A door, perhaps, or something more sinister. Poirot's head snapped up, his eyes gleaming. The winter hides many things, he murmured, but not from Hercule Poirot. Chapter 2. The Gathering Storm. The blizzard howled outside Abernathy Manor, its icy fingers clawing at the windows as if demanding entry. Within the drawing room the air was heavy with suspicion, the chandelier's light casting jagged shadows across the faces of the gathered guests. The fire in the hearth snapped and popped, but its warmth did little to dispel the chill that had settled over the group since the discovery of Lord Abernathy's body. Hercule Poirot stood near the fireplace, his small, immaculate figure a stark contrast to the room's opulence, his sharp eyes scanning each person with the precision of a jeweler examining a flawed gem. Captain Hastings paced near the velvet drapes, his boots muffled by the thick Persian rug. "Poirot, old chap, this is madness," he exclaimed, his voice tinged with unease. "Lord Abernathy, stabbed in his own study, footprints leading nowhere, and this blasted storm trapping us all. The killer's here, isn't he? One of us." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching faintly. "Précisément, mon ami. The killer does not vanish into the snow like a phantom. They sit among us, hiding behind a mask of innocence. But the mask, it will slip." His tone was calm, almost musical, yet carried a weight that silenced the room. The suspects were a study in contrasts, each betraying their turmoil in subtle ways. Lady Margaret Abernathy, seated on a brocade sofa, clutched a lace handkerchief, her emerald eyes glistening with tears. That seemed more performative than genuine. Her silk gown shimmered in the firelight, but her rigid posture suggested a woman bracing for a storm of her own making. Victor Abernathy, the Lord's dissolute son, leaned against the mantelpiece, his brandy glass nearly empty, his handsome features twisted into a scowl. Eliza Thorne, the governess, stood near a bookcase, her severe black dress blending into the shadows, her fingers nervously twisting a stray lock of hair. Dr. James Harlan, the family physician, puffed on his pipe, the acrid smoke curling upward as his steady gaze darted between the others. Inspector Japp, ever the pragmatic policeman, stood by the door, his notebook open, his Cockney accent cutting through the tension as he barked orders to a trembling footman to secure the manor. Poirot's voice broke the uneasy silence. Mesdames et messieurs, we must establish the facts. Lord Abernathy was last seen alive at 6 by Dr. Harlan. The maid found him at 7. The footprints lead from the study to the garden, yet none return. The dagger is from his collection, a personal choice, non? Let us begin with alibis. Where were you between 6 and 7 this evening? Lady Abernathy spoke first, her voice soft but controlled. I was in my boudoir preparing for dinner. I heard nothing unusual. Her eyes flicked to Victor, a fleeting glance Poirot noted. Victor snorted, tossing back the last of his brandy. I was in the billiard room knocking balls about, alone if you must know. Father and I weren't exactly on speaking terms. His tone was defiant, but his hands trembled slightly, betraying nerves or guilt. Eliza Thorne's voice was barely audible, her eyes fixed on the floor. I was in the library reading. I prefer my own company. Her hesitation was slight, but Poirot's keen ears caught it like a false note in a symphony. Dr. Harlan cleared his throat, his pipe glowing as he exhaled. I was in the conservatory smoking. The storm was loud, but I heard no scream until the maid raised the alarm. His gruff demeanor was unshaken, yet his fingers tightened around the pipe's stem. Japp scribbled furiously, muttering, All alone, eh? Convenient. Nobody to vouch for anyone. He turned to Poirot. I've checked the grounds as best I could in this weather. Those footprints end at the edge of the garden near the frozen pond. No tracks beyond. Snow's too deep. It's impossible for someone to have escaped. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Impossible, Inspector? Non, non. The impossible is merely a challenge to the little gray cells. The footprints, they are a message, but not the one the killer wishes us to read. He paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking on the parquet floor. Consider. The dagger is intimate, a weapon of passion or vengeance, yet the footprints suggest an outsider, a contradiction, n'est-ce pas? Hastings, hovering near Poirot, whispered, It's eerie, Poirot. The snow, the locked manor, that dagger. It's like something out of a Gothic novel. Poirot smiled faintly. A novel, perhaps, but one we shall rewrite with logic. Tell me, Hastings, what do you know of our host's life, his enemies? Hastings frowned, lowering his voice. Lord Abernathy was a hard man, made his fortune in steel, but rumors swirled about shady dealings. Smuggling, some said. He'd fallen out with Victor over gambling debts, and Lady Abernathy. Well, there were whispers of her unhappiness. Eliza's a mystery. Came here a year ago as governess to the late daughter. Harlan's been with the family for years, but I heard he and Abernathy argued recently. Poirot nodded, filing away each detail. A family steeped in secrets, and secrets, mon ami, are the kindling of murder. The room grew quieter, the storm's howl filling the silence. Lady Abernathy dabbed her eyes, though no tears fell. My husband was not an easy man, she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. But who would do this? In our own home? Victor sneered. Plenty of people hated him, Mother. You know that better than anyone. His words dripped with accusation, and Lady Abernathy's face paled. Eliza Thorne stepped forward, her voice sharper now. This is no time for family quarrels. We're trapped here, and one of us... She trailed off, her eyes darting to the window where snow piled higher against the glass. Harlan blew a smoke ring, his tone gruff. Let's not jump to conclusions. Could have been a vagrant, caught in the storm, looking for valuables. Poirot raised an eyebrow. A vagrant who uses a jeweled dagger and leaves no trace of entry? Non, docteur. This is the work of someone who knows this house and its master. Japp snapped his notebook shut. Right, I'm searching the rooms. Nobody moves until we're done. He strode out, leaving the group under Poirot's watchful gaze. The fire crackled and the chandelier flickered, casting the room into a moment of near darkness. In that instant, a faint rustle came from the hallway. A sound like fabric brushing against wood. Poirot's head snapped toward the door, his eyes narrowing. What was that? He murmured, stepping toward the threshold. Hastings followed, his hand on his revolver. Probably the wind, Poirot. This old place creaks like a ship. But Poirot's expression was grave. The wind does not wear silk, mon ami. He paused, listening as the storm roared on. Then from somewhere deep within the manor, a low, guttural moan echoed, freezing the blood of everyone in the room. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Past. The snow continued its relentless assault on Abernathy Manor, piling against the ancient stone walls as if to bury the house and its secrets. Inside, the air was thick with suspicion, the drawing room's warmth a frail defense against the chill of murder. Hercule Poirot, his small frame silhouetted against the flickering firelight, stood in the parlor where he had summoned each suspect for private interviews. The ormolu clock ticked ominously, its rhythm a counterpoint to the howling wind outside. Poirot's mustache twitched as he prepared to unravel the tangled threads of motive and opportunity, his little gray cells humming with purpose. Captain Hastings hovered nearby, his face flushed with nervous energy. Poirot, this is a devil of a case, he whispered, glancing at the closed door. That moan we heard, it's got everyone on edge, and those footprints leading nowhere. It's unnatural. Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet amusement. Unnatural, mon ami? No, it is all too human. The moan, the footprints, they are but pieces of a puzzle designed to distract or deceive. We shall begin with the truth. He gestured toward the door as Lady Margaret Abernathy entered, her emerald gown rustling like dry leaves in the dim light. Lady Abernathy settled onto a velvet chair, her posture regal despite the strain in her eyes. Monsieur Poirot, she began, her voice low and measured. This tragedy has broken me. Charles was difficult, but he was my husband. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, though Poirot noted no tears fell. Madame, Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing, you mentioned at tea your husband was revising his will. Tell me, what changes did he intend? She hesitated, her fingers tightening on the handkerchief. He was frustrated with Victor's gambling. He threatened to cut his allowance entirely and leave the estate to a distant cousin. Charles was a tyrant when crossed. Her voice wavered, but her gaze held steady, as if daring Poirot to probe further. Merci, madame. And you were in your boudoir at the time of the murder? Poirot's question was casual, but his eyes missed nothing. Yes, alone, she replied too quickly. I heard nothing until the maid's scream. She rose, smoothing her gown, and glided out, leaving a faint scent of jasmine in her wake. Victor Abernathy was next, slouching into the room with a scowl, his tie loosened and his brandy glass replaced by a cigarette. What's this, Poirot? Playing inquisitor? He sneered, exhaling smoke. I didn't kill the old man, if that's what you're thinking. Needed his money too much. Poirot tilted his head, studying the young man's trembling hands. Monsieur Victor, your father's threat to disinherit you. It was serious, oui? A motive, perhaps, for a desperate act. Victor's eyes flashed. Desperate? I'm no saint, but I'm no murderer. I was in the billiard room, like I said. Check the cues, they're scuffed from use. His bravado faltered, and Poirot noted the sweat beading on his brow despite the room's chill. Eliza Thorne entered next, her severe black dress absorbing the light, her sharp features taut with unease. "Monsieur Poirot, I have nothing to hide," she said, her voice clipped, but her fingers twisted a silver locket at her throat. "Mademoiselle Thorne," Poirot said softly, "you were governess to Lord Abernathy's late daughter, were you not? A tragic accident, I understand. Did it leave resentment?" Eliza's eyes widened, then narrowed. "He blamed me for her fall from that horse. Said I was negligent, but I cared for her like my own." Her voice cracked and she looked away. "I had no reason to harm him." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And at 6 o'clock you were in the library?" "Yes, reading, alone." Her words were firm, but her locket twisting intensified, a telltale sign of nerves. Dr. James Harlan was the last, his broad frame filling the doorway as he entered, pipe in hand, its smoke curling like a specter. "Let's make this quick, Poirot," he said gruffly. "I've patience to think of, even in this storm." Poirot's smile was polite but piercing. "Doctor, you argued with Lord Abernathy yesterday, no? About your prescriptions for Lady Abernathy?" Harlan's jaw tightened. "He accused me of overprescribing laudanum. Utter nonsense. I've treated this family for years, saved his life once after a riding accident." He puffed his pipe, the glow illuminating his hard eyes. "I was in the conservatory at 6 smoking. Ask the gardener, he passed by." Poirot leaned forward. "And your disagreement, did it concern only medicine?" Harlan hesitated, then shrugged. He was paranoid, always seeing enemies. "Business troubles," he said. His tone was dismissive, but Poirot caught the flicker of unease in his gaze. As Harlan left, Hastings whispered, "Good Lord, Poirot, they're all hiding something. Lady Abernathy's too composed, Victor's a wreck, Eliza's jumpy, and Harlan's too calm, and that moan, what was it?" Poirot stroked his mustache, his mind racing. "Each has a motive, Hastings, jealousy, greed, revenge, fear. But motives alone do not make a murderer. We need evidence." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "And that sound, it was no accident." The interviews concluded, Poirot and Hastings returned to the drawing room, where the group sat in uneasy silence. The storm raged on, the windows rattling as if the manor itself protested its secrets. Japp re-entered, his face grim. "Search the grounds again. Those footprints, they stopped dead at the pond. No sign of anyone leaving. It's like the killer vanished." Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Or wishes us to think so, Inspector. The snow, it is a canvas for deception." As the group dispersed to their rooms, a maid approached, her face pale as the snow outside. "Monsieur Poirot, sir, I found something. In the hallway near the study." She held out a bloodied glove, its leather stained dark red. It was stuffed behind a vase. Poirot took it, his gloved fingers tracing the stitching. Curieux. A man's glove, perhaps Victor's or another's. Turned to Japp. "We must examine this at once." Before Japp could reply, a sharp crack echoed from above, a sound like breaking glass, followed by a low, guttural cry that seemed to rise from the very walls. The group froze, eyes wide, as the chandelier flickered, plunging the room into shadow. Chapter 4. The hidden letter dawn broke over Abernathy Manor, but the light was feeble, smothered by the unrelenting blizzard that cloaked the Yorkshire hills in a ghostly pallor. The manor's ancient walls groaned under the weight of the snow, and within the air was taut with suspicion, as if the house itself held its breath. Hercule Poirot stood in Lord Abernathy's study where the murder had occurred, his polished shoes silent on the blood-stained Persian rug. The jeweled dagger, now removed by Inspector Japp for evidence, had left a grim void in the room's somber opulence. The French windows, still ajar, emitted icy drafts that stirred the papers on the desk, whispering secrets Poirot was determined to uncover. Captain Hastings shivered beside him, his breath visible in the chill. "Good Lord, Poirot, it's colder than a tomb in here," he muttered, rubbing his hands. "That glove we found last night, Victor's, wasn't it? The chap's in deep trouble now." Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes scanning the room with surgical precision. "The glove, mon ami, is a clue but not a conclusion. It is too convenient, no? We must look beyond the obvious." He knelt beside the desk, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of a drawer. With a gentle tug, he revealed a crumpled letter, its edges frayed as if handled in haste. He smoothed it out, reading aloud in his precise, accented voice. "You will pay for what you did to my family. The winter will claim you." It was unsigned, postmarked from London, dated a week prior. Hastings gasped. "A death threat? Poirot, this changes everything. Someone planned this murder." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Oui, but is the letter a warning or a performance? The paper, it is from the Manor's own stationery, despite the postmark. Curious, none?" He tucked the letter into his pocket, his mind whirring like a finely tuned clock. Inspector Japp burst into the room, his overcoat dusted with snow. "I've questioned the staff, Poirot," he said, his Cockney accent sharp with frustration. "Alibis hold for now. Cooks in the kitchen, maids in the servants' hall. But those footprints outside, they still end at the frozen pond. No tracks beyond, not a single one." "It's impossible." Poirot smiled faintly. "Impossible, Inspector? Or deliberate? The footprints, they are too perfect, as if made to be seen. Perhaps they were created after the murder to mislead." He stepped to the French windows, studying the single trail leading into the snow-draped garden. The tracks were deep, deliberate, vanishing at the pond's icy edge. "The killer wishes us to believe in an escape, but I, Hercule Poirot, am not so easily deceived." Hastings frowned. "You mean a red herring? But who'd go to such lengths in this storm?" "Someone with much to hide," Poirot replied, his voice low. He turned back to the desk, examining the dagger's entry point in the chair's leather. The weapon was wiped clean save for a faint smudge, not blood but ink, a theatrical touch perhaps to distract from the true method. Japp scratched his head. "Ink? You're saying the killer staged this like a play?" "Précisément," Poirot said. "But every play has a script, and we shall find it." The group reconvened in the drawing room, where the fire struggled against the morning's chill. Lady Margaret Abernathy, her face pale as porcelain, gasped upon seeing the letter Poirot presented. "Charles never mentioned this," she whispered, her hand trembling. "Who could hate him so?" Victor, slouched in an armchair, sneered. "Father had enemies aplenty, mother. Business rivals, scorned partners, take your pick." His eyes flicked to the glove, now in Japp's possession, and his jaw tightened. "That's not mine, I swear it. Someone's framing me." Eliza Thorne, standing by the window, paled as the letter was read. Her fingers clutched her locket and her voice was barely audible. "It's dreadful. But I know nothing of it." Her eyes darted to the door as if she longed to flee. Dr. Harlan, puffing his pipe, raised an eyebrow. "A letter like that could be anyone's grudge. Abernathy wasn't exactly a saint." His tone was gruff, but Poirot noted the slight tremor in his hand as he lit another match. Hastings leaned toward Poirot, whispering, "They're all rattled, but Eliza looked like she'd seen a ghost, and Victor's sweating bullets over that glove." Poirot nodded, his expression inscrutable. "Each conceals something, Hastings. The letter, the glove, the footprints, they are threads in a tapestry of deceit. We must pull them apart." As evening descended, the manor grew darker, the storm's howl a constant reminder of their isolation. The guests dined in tense silence, the clink of silver on china like accusations in the air. Poirot observed Lady Abernathy's delicate sips of wine, Victor's restless fidgeting, Eliza's averted gaze, Harlan's steady calm. The chandelier flickered, casting their faces in shifting shadows. After dinner, Poirot retired to the library, poring over the manor's floor plans. The study's layout, Hastings, it is key. There may be more than meets the eye. His fingers traced the blueprint, pausing at an odd notation near the study's wall. Before he could investigate further, a gunshot rang out from the attic, sharp and jarring, echoing through the manor's labyrinthine halls. The group rushed upstairs, their footsteps pounding on the creaking stairs. The attic door stood open, revealing a dusty room filled with trunks and cobwebs. A window was shattered, snow drifting in like accusing fingers. But no shooter, no body. Only a faint smell of gunpowder lingering in the air. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice a low murmur. Another distraction, perhaps, but why the attic? And who pulls the strings? He stepped to the broken window, peering into the storm as a faint shadow moved in the darkness below. Chapter 5. Whispers in the dark. The blizzard's fury had not abated, its relentless howl wrapping Abernathy Manor in a cocoon of isolation. Within the grand dining hall, the air was heavy with mistrust, the candle-lit chandelier casting trembling shadows across the mahogany table. The clink of silver on fine china was the only sound as the guests dined, their faces etched with unease. Hercule Poirot, seated at the table's end, observed the group with his usual precision. His small, immaculate figure a beacon of calm amidst the storm of suspicion. His sharp eyes darted from one suspect to another, cataloging every glance, every nervous gesture. Captain Hastings, seated beside him, leaned close, his voice a hushed murmur. "Poirot, that gunshot in the attic, it's got me rattled. And that letter, the glove. Someone's playing a dangerous game." His fork hovered over his untouched plate, his appetite lost to the night's events. Poirot's mustache twitched, his tone low and deliberate. "Oui, mon ami, a game indeed, but one with rules we shall uncover." The gunshot was no accident, it was meant to unsettle, to distract. The killer weaves a web, but the threads are fraying. He sipped his wine, his gaze lingering on the suspects. Lady Margaret Abernathy, her emerald gown now replaced by a somber black dress, picked at her food, her delicate hands trembling slightly. Victor Abernathy, slouched across from her, drained his wineglass with a scowl, his eyes darting to the shadowed corners of the room. Eliza Thorne, the governess, sat rigidly, her fork scraping the plate as if to mask her unease, her sharp features taut. Dr. James Harlan, at the table's head, cut his meat with surgical precision, his pipe resting beside him, its faint tobacco scent mingling with the room's tension. Hastings whispered again, his voice urgent. "Poirot, I overheard something last week. Eliza arguing with Lord Abernathy in the library. Something about a secret inheritance. Could it be tied to this?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Most interesting, Hastings. The victim was rewriting his will, no? That is a spark that ignites many motives." He turned his attention to the group, his voice cutting through the silence. "Mesdames et messieurs, a question. Did Lord Abernathy discuss his will with any of you recently?" Lady Abernathy's fork clattered to her plate. "He mentioned it vaguely," she said, her voice strained. "He was reconsidering certain provisions for the family's future." Her eyes flicked to Victor, who snorted derisively. "Future," Victor muttered. "He wanted to control us even from the grave. Cut me out, no doubt." His tone was bitter, but his fingers gripped the tablecloth, betraying fear. Eliza Thorne's voice was soft, almost lost in the storm's howl. "He never spoke of it to me. I was merely the governess." Her words were measured, but her eyes avoided Poirot's. Harlan cleared his throat, his gruff voice steady. He complained about Victor's debts, said he'd redirect funds to charity, nothing specific. He lit his pipe, the match's flare illuminating his hard features. Poirot nodded, filing away each response. The will. It is a shadow over this house. But there is more. He paused, his gaze settling on Eliza. Mademoiselle Thorne, you were close to the late daughter, oui? Perhaps you know of other secrets? Eliza's hand flew to her locket, her face paling. I cared for her, yes, but secrets, no. Her voice faltered, and she rose abruptly, excusing herself to the library. Hastings frowned. She's hiding something, Poirot. That locket, she's always clutching it. Poirot's lips curved slightly. Précisément. The smallest gestures reveal the largest truths. He excused himself, following Eliza to the library, where he found her standing by a shelf, a torn page in her trembling hands. He approached silently, his voice soft but commanding. Mademoiselle, what is this you hold? Eliza gasped, the page slipping to the floor. Poirot retrieved it, reading aloud. E.T. knows too much, must silence her. The initials matched her own, and her eyes widened in panic. I found it in a book, she stammered. I swear I didn't write it. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Then who did, mademoiselle? And why does it bear your initials? Before she could answer, he pressed on. You argued with Lord Abernathy about an inheritance, no? Tell me the truth. Eliza's voice broke, tears spilling. He seduced my sister years ago, drove her to suicide. He left her a small bequest, but when I came here as governess, he threatened to expose my family's shame if I spoke of it. I wanted justice through the courts, not murder. Poirot's expression softened, but his mind raced. Merci, mademoiselle. Your truth is a step toward ours. He tucked the page into his pocket, his thoughts turning to the diary's author. As they returned to the dining hall, the storm's roar intensified, rattling the windows. The group had dispersed, but Lady Abernathy lingered, her face ghostly in the candlelight. Monsieur Poirot, is there no end to this nightmare? She whispered, her voice trembling. Before Poirot could reply, the power failed, plunging the manor into darkness. The candles flickered out, and a collective gasp rose from the shadows. Poirot's voice cut through the panic. Calm, mes amis. Light the lamps. But as matches were struck, a faint shadow moved in the hallway beyond, a figure fleeting and silent, vanishing into the gloom. Hastings grabbed Poirot's arm. Did you see that? Someone's out there. Poirot's voice was steady, but his eyes burned with intensity. We, Hastings. The killer does not rest, and neither shall we. He stepped toward the hallway, the darkness swallowing his small frame as the storm screamed on. Chapter 6. The False Trail. The darkness that enveloped Abernathy Manor seemed to deepen with each passing hour. The blizzard's wail a relentless dirge that echoed through the ancient halls. The power outage had left the house reliant on flickering oil lamps, their feeble glow casting grotesque shadows on the oak-paneled walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand hall, his small, immaculate figure a beacon of order amidst the chaos, his sharp eyes glinting in the lamplight. The bloodied glove, the torn diary page, and the mysterious shadow in the hallway had tightened the noose of suspicion, and Poirot's little gray cells were alight with the puzzle's complexity. Captain Hastings paced nearby, his revolver tucked into his belt, his face etched with unease. Poirot, that shadow last night, it was no trick of the light, he whispered, his voice taut. Someone's stalking these halls, and that gunshot in the attic. It's as if the killer's toying with us. Poirot's mustache twitched, his tone calm but edged with steel. Précisément, mon ami. The killer plays a game of misdirection, but every move reveals their hand. The shadow, the gunshot, They are threads in a tapestry of deceit. We must follow them to the truth. He turned toward the study where Inspector Japp awaited with news of the glove. Japp, his overcoat still dusted with snow, held up the bloodied glove, now sealed in a cloth bag. "It's Victor's, all right," he said, his Cockney accent sharp. "Found it in his room, hidden under a floorboard. The blood matches the Lord's. Tested it myself. He's our man, Poirot." Victor, summoned to the study, paled at the sight of the glove. "That's not mine," he protested, his voice cracking. "I mean it is, but I didn't hide it. Someone planted it, I swear." His hands trembled and his eyes darted to the French windows where the snow still obscured the footprint's end. Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Monsieur Victor, you claim you were in the billiard room at the time of the murder. Yet your glove stained with your father's blood tells a different story. Explain, s'il vous plaît." Victor ran a hand through his hair, his bravado crumbling. I don't know. I left my gloves in the hall yesterday. Anyone could have taken it." His voice rose, desperate, drawing a sharp glance from Lady Abernathy, who had entered silently behind him. "Enough, Victor," she said, her voice cold as the storm outside. "Your recklessness has brought us to this." Her black dress seemed to absorb the lamplight, her face a mask of controlled grief. Poirot turned to Japp. "Arrest him, Inspector." No. The glove is too convenient, a beacon to distract us. Let us examine another trail." He led the group to the frozen pond where the footprints ended abruptly. The ice was cracked, but no body lay beneath, only dark, unyielding water. "These tracks," Poirot mused, "they were made after the murder, I think, to suggest an escape that never was." Hastings shivered, his breath clouding in the frigid air. "After? But why go to such trouble in this storm?" "To confuse, mon ami," Poirot replied. "The killer is clever, but not clever enough." He knelt, examining the snow's texture. "The edges of these prints are too crisp, made when the storm had slowed. A living man, or woman, walked this path, then returned another way." Back in the manor, Poirot summoned Dr. Harlan, who entered the study with his usual gruff demeanor, pipe in hand. "What now, Poirot? More theories?" he asked, his tone dismissive. Poirot's smile was polite but sharp. "Doctor, you argued with Lord Abernathy about your prescriptions, oui? But was there more? A secret, perhaps, that he held over you?" Harlan's pipe paused mid-puff, his eyes narrowing. "He blackmailed me once, years ago, over a medical error. A patient died under my care, accidental but messy. Abernathy used it to keep me loyal. But I didn't kill him. His alibi, smoking in the conservatory, was verified by the gardener, yet Poirot noted the faint tremor in his voice. Lady Abernathy, lingering near the door, spoke softly. "Monsieur Poirot, my husband had a mistress once, Eliza's sister. That's why she came here, to confront him. I saw her near the study before dinner." Her words were measured, but her eyes held a flicker of malice. Eliza, overhearing, rushed in, her face pale. "That's a lie. I was in the library." Her voice shook and her locket gleamed in the lamplight as she clutched it. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough. The truth lies not in accusations, but in evidence. The glove, the footprints, the diary page. They are false trails, meant to obscure." He paused, his eyes scanning the group. "But the killer cannot hide forever." As night fell, the manor's shadows deepened, the oil lamps casting a sickly glow. Poirot and Hastings inspected the cellar, drawn by a maid's report of disturbed shelves. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of old wine and dust. As they navigated the narrow stone passage, a low creak echoed, followed by a deafening crash. The wine racks toppled, bottles shattering in a cascade of glass and liquid, narrowly missing Hastings as he leapt aside. "Good heavens!" Hastings gasped, his heart pounding. That was no accident, Poirot. Someone rigged those racks. Poirot's eyes gleamed in the dim light, his voice steady. Oui, mon ami. The killer grows bold and desperate. He examined the fallen racks, noting a cut rope tied to a hidden pulley. A trap, set for us. But for whom was it meant? As he spoke, a faint scuff of footsteps echoed from the cellar's depths, vanishing into the darkness. Chapter 7. Threads Unraveling. The blizzard's wrath had eased to a mournful whimper, but Abernathy Manor remained a prison of snow and secrets, its ancient walls creaking under the weight of unspoken truths. The flickering oil lamps cast a sickly glow across the grand hall. Where Hercule Poirot stood, his small, immaculate figure a pillar of resolve amidst the gathering shadows. The cellar trap, narrowly avoided, had sharpened the air with danger, and the bloodied glove, torn diary page, and staged footprints wove a tapestry of deception that Poirot was determined to unravel. His little gray cells hummed, piecing together the puzzle's jagged edges. Captain Hastings, still shaken from the cellar incident, clutched his revolver, his eyes darting to the darkened corners. "Poirot, that trap was meant to kill," he whispered, his voice taut with alarm. "The killer's not just hiding, they're hunting us. And that glove in Victor's room, it's damning, isn't it?" Poirot's mustache twitched, his tone measured but piercing. "Non, mon ami. The glove is a distraction like the footprints designed to point fingers while the true culprit slips away. But the threads of this mystery, they are unraveling." He held up the crumpled letter from the study, its threatening words. "The winter will claim you," etched in his mind. This letter, it is not what it seems. The manor's stationery, the ink smudge on the dagger, they are clues to a mind most cunning. Inspector Japp joined them, his notebook bristling with scribbled notes. "Victor's in a panic, Poirot," he said, his Cockney accent thick with frustration. "Swears the glove was planted, but I'm half ready to lock him up. Those footprints, though, still no sense to 'em. And now that cellar business, this case is a right mess." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A mess, Inspector? No, it is a design. Let us test another thread." He summoned Dr. James Harlan to the study, where the air still held the faint metallic tang of blood. Harlan entered, his broad shoulders filling the doorway, his pipe emitting curls of smoke that danced in the lamplight. "Doctor," Poirot began, his voice soft but unyielding, "you admitted Lord Abernathy blackmailed you over a past medical error, but I suspect more. The dagger's smudge, it was not blood but ink, oui? And your pipe tobacco, it matches ash found near the body. Explain, s'il vous plaît." Harlan's jaw tightened, his pipe pausing mid-puff. "Preposterous," he growled, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "I was in the conservatory, as the gardener confirmed. As for the ash, this house is full of smokers. And ink, you're grasping, Poirot." Poirot's smile was thin. "Grasping? No, I am weaving. The smudge suggests the dagger was a ruse, a theatrical flourish to hide the true method. Poison, perhaps, administered by one with medical skill." He paused, watching Harlan's face. "You prescribed laudanum to Lady Abernathy. Was it only for her?" Harlan laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You think I poisoned him? Abernathy was stabbed, man. Your little gray cells are spinning fairy tales." But his hand trembled as he relit his pipe, and Poirot noted the sweat beading on his brow. Next, Poirot confronted Victor in the drawing room, where the young man slouched, a fresh brandy in hand. "Monsieur Victor," Poirot said, "you borrowed money from Dr. Harlan, oui? A debt that bound you to him, perhaps in ways your father disapproved?" Victor's glass shook, spilling amber liquid. "Harlan lent me a bit to cover gambling debts, yes. Father was furious, threatened to cut me off entirely, but I didn't kill him. His voice rose, desperate, drawing Lady Abernathy's attention from across the room. She glided forward, her black dress rustling like a whisper of doom. "Victor, control yourself," she said, her voice icy. "Monsieur Poirot, I saw Eliza near the study before Charles was found. She was agitated. Surely that means something." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Merci, madame, but accusations are not evidence." He turned to Hastings. "Mon ami, fetch Mademoiselle Thorne. We must clarify her movements." Eliza entered, her severe black dress stark against her pale face, her locket clutched tightly. "I was in the library," she insisted, her voice trembling. "I swear it. That diary page, it wasn't mine. Someone's trying to frame me just like Victor." Poirot held up the letter. "This, mademoiselle, was written on Manor stationery, not sent from London, a lie to mislead. Did you write it seeking revenge for your sister?" Eliza's eyes widened, tears spilling. "No, I wanted justice, yes, but not murder. I found the page, that's all." Her voice broke and she sank into a chair. Poirot paced, his mind racing. The glove, the letter, the diary page, they are false trails, but they point to a truth. The killer used the storm, the Manor's isolation to stage a perfect crime. But perfection, it is an illusion. He paused, his gaze settling on the study's bookcase. "Hastings, help me examine this wall." Together they discovered a hidden panel, its seams concealed by ornate carvings. It opened to reveal a narrow passage, its floor free of snow, leading from the study to the garden. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured. "The footprints were a lie. The killer never left. They returned through here." Japp's eyes widened. A secret passage. That changes everything. Before Poirot could respond, a maid burst in, her face ashen. "Sir, Dr. Harlan's medical bag. It's been tampered with. Poison vials are missing." Poirot's expression hardened. The killer's mask slips further. But they are not done. As he spoke, a low thud echoed from above, followed by a chilling silence. The group froze, eyes darting to the ceiling where dust drifted down like snow. Chapter 8. The gathering accusation. The storm had quieted to a mournful sigh, but Abernathy Manor remained steeped in a chill that went beyond the winter's bite. The grand drawing room, its velvet drapes drawn against the fading snow, was lit by the unsteady flicker of oil lamps, their light casting long, wavering shadows across the faces of the gathered suspects. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's center, his small, immaculate figure commanding attention, his mustache gleaming like a blade in the lamplight. The hidden passage, the missing poison vials, and the ominous thud from above had tightened the web of suspicion, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to unravel the killer's design. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, his revolver tucked into his belt, his eyes darting nervously to the ceiling. "Poirot, that thud, it's got everyone rattled," he whispered, his voice low but urgent. "And those poison vials missing from Harlan's bag? The killer's still at work, isn't he?" Poirot's gaze was steady, his tone calm yet piercing. "Oui, mon ami. The killer grows desperate, their carefully laid trails crumbling. The glove, the footprints, the letter. They are but smoke meant to obscure the truth. But the truth, it shines through." He turned to the group, his voice rising slightly, commanding silence. "Mesdames et messieurs, the time for games is over. A murder has been committed and the killer stands among us. I, Hercule Poirot, shall name them." Lady Margaret Abernathy, seated on a brocade sofa, clutched her lace handkerchief, her face pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot, this is madness," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and indignation. "We're trapped here, grieving, and you accuse us?" Victor Abernathy, slouched in an armchair, snorted, his brandy glass empty. "Go on, Poirot, point your finger. That glove was planted in my room and I'll not take the blame." His voice was defiant, but his eyes betrayed panic, darting to his mother. Eliza Thorne, standing by the bookcase, gripped her locket, her sharp features taut. "I told you I didn't write that diary page," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone's framing me just as they framed Victor." Dr. James Harlan, puffing his pipe near the window, raised an eyebrow. "This is a farce, Poirot. You've got nothing but theories, ink smudges, ash, secret passages. Where's your proof?" His gruff tone was steady, but his fingers tightened on the pipe's stem. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking on the parquet floor, each step a deliberate beat in the room's tense silence. "Proof, Doctor? It lies in the details. The letter threatening Lord Abernathy's life was written on Manor stationery, not sent from London, a lie to suggest an outsider. The glove stained with blood was hidden too conveniently in Monsieur Victor's room. The diary page accusing Mademoiselle Thorne was torn too neatly, as if meant to be found." He paused, his eyes sweeping the group. "And the footprints, leading to the pond. They were made after the murder, through the hidden passage, to create the illusion of escape." Hastings gasped. "Good Lord, Poirot, you mean it was all staged?" "Précisément," Poirot replied, "but the killer's greatest mistake was the method. The dagger was a distraction. The true cause of death was poison, an overdose of laudanum administered with precision." He turned to Harlan, his voice sharp. "Docteur, your medical bag is missing vials of poison, and the ash near the body matches your tobacco. You adjusted the conservatory clock to fake your alibi, oui?" Harlan's face reddened, his pipe dropping to the floor with a clatter. "That's absurd! My alibi's solid. The gardener saw me." But his voice cracked and sweat beaded on his brow. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Non, Docteur. The gardener saw you, but the clock was tampered with. Set back to give you time to slip through the passage, poison Lord Abernathy, and stage the dagger." He turned to Victor. "And you, monsieur? Your debt to Harlan bound you to him. Did you know of his plans?" Victor leapt to his feet, his face ashen. "I owed him money, yes, but I didn't know he'd kill father. I thought the glove was my mistake, hid it to protect myself." His confession hung in the air, a tangled mix of truth and fear. Lady Abernathy rose, her voice breaking. "Enough! I can't bear this!" She swayed, her hand clutching her chest. "It was me. I poisoned Charles. His affairs, his cruelty, I couldn't endure it." Her eyes were wild, her confession a desperate cry. Poirot's expression softened, but his voice was firm. "Non, madame. Your guilt is real, but your confession is false. You seek to protect another, perhaps your son. The true killer is not so reckless." He turned, his gaze settling on Harlan, but before he could speak, a sharp creak echoed from the hallway. A door slowly opening, revealing a shadowed figure poised in the doorway. The group froze, the lamplight flickering as if in protest. Hastings gripped his revolver, his voice a harsh whisper. "Poirot, who's that?" Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice low and intense. "The killer's mask is slipping, mon ami. And they are not yet done." He stepped toward the figure, the shadow swallowing his small frame as the room held its breath. Chapter 9. The Winter's Truth. The shadows in Abernathy Manor seemed to pulse with menace as the oil lamps flickered, their dim light barely holding back the darkness that clung to the drawing room. The storm outside had dwindled to a ghostly whisper, but within, the air crackled with tension, as if the house itself awaited the unmasking of its secrets. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's center, his small, immaculate figure radiating authority, his mustache gleaming like a beacon in the gloom. The creaking door and the shadowed figure had silenced the group, their faces pale and taut. Lady Margaret Abernathy, Victor, Eliza Thorne, Dr. James Harlan, and Captain Hastings, all poised on the edge of revelation. Poirot's voice cut through the silence, steady and commanding. Mesdames et messieurs, the killer's game is at its end. The glove, the footprints, the letter, the diary page. They were threads in a tapestry of deception woven to mislead. But the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot, they see through the lies. He paused, his eyes locking onto Dr. Harlan, who stood rigid, his pipe unlit, his hands clenched. Hastings, gripping his revolver, whispered, "Poirot. Was that figure the killer? Are we in danger now?" Poirot's gaze never wavered. "Danger, mon ami. Oui, but it is the killer who should fear, for their mask is torn." He turned to the group, his voice rising. "Dr. Harlan, you are the winter killer. You poisoned Lord Abernathy with an overdose of laudanum administered before the dagger was plunged to stage a violent crime. The footprints made through the hidden passage were a ruse to suggest an outsider. The ink smudge on the dagger, the ash from your pipe near the body, the tampered clock, these betray you." Harlan's face contorted, his voice a snarl. "You're mad, Poirot. I was in the conservatory. My alibi holds." But his eyes darted to the door where Inspector Japp now stood, blocking the exit. Poirot raised a hand, his tone unrelenting. "Non, doctor. The gardener saw you, but the clock was set back, giving you time to slip through the passage. You poisoned Lord Abernathy, then staged the dagger and footprints to confuse. The letter, written on manor stationery, was your creation, meant to cast suspicion elsewhere. And the missing poison vials from your bag, where are they now?" Lady Abernathy gasped, her handkerchief falling to the floor. "James, is this true?" Her voice trembled, but her eyes held a flicker of something. Relief, perhaps, or vindication. Victor leapt to his feet, his face ashen. "You bastard! You let me take the blame." His hands shook, the brandy glass long forgotten. Eliza Thorne, clutching her locket, stepped back, her voice a whisper. "I knew you were cruel, doctor, but this—" Her eyes were wide, filled with a mix of fear and realization. Harlan laughed, a harsh, desperate sound that echoed in the room. "You've no proof, Poirot. A smudge, some ash? It's nothing." But his voice cracked and sweat glistened on his brow as he backed toward the window. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice calm but lethal. "Proof, doctor? The ash matches your tobacco, found only near the body. The ink on the dagger matches your fountain pen. The passage, snow-free, allowed you to create the footprints after the murder. And your motive? Lord Abernathy discovered your opium smuggling ring, using the manor as a drop point. He demanded more than money. He threatened exposure. You killed to silence him." Harlan's composure shattered, his pipe clattering to the floor. "Damn you, Poirot!" he roared, lunging forward, his broad frame a blur of rage. Japp was faster, tackling him to the ground, cuffs clicking around his wrists as the room erupted in chaos. Lady Abernathy sobbed, Victor shouted accusations, and Eliza sank into a chair, her locket falling open to reveal a faded photograph of her sister. Hastings, revolver still in hand, exhaled. "Good Lord, Poirot, you've done it. But the gunshot in the attic, the cellar trap, were those his doing too?" Poirot nodded, his expression grave. "Oui, Hastings. The gunshot was a distraction fired to sow panic. The cellar trap, meant to eliminate witnesses, perhaps you or I. Harlan's medical knowledge hid the poison's symptoms, but his arrogance betrayed him." Japp hauled Harlan to his feet, the doctor's face a mask of fury. "How did you know?" he spat, his voice low and venomous. "You meddling little man." Poirot's smile was serene. "The little gray cells, docteur. They see what others miss. The clock's discrepancy, the passage's secrecy, the poison's precision. They spoke your name." As Japp led Harlan away, the room fell silent, the weight of truth settling over the group. Lady Abernathy rose, her voice steady now. "Monsieur Poirot, you've saved us from ruin. But at what cost?" Her eyes lingered on Victor, who looked away, shame etching his features. Eliza spoke softly, her voice breaking. "My sister's death drove me here, but I never wanted this. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot." She clutched the locket, a tear falling. Outside, the snow began to melt, revealing the garden's barren truth. No escape tracks, only the manor's secrets laid bare. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice soft. "The winter hides much, mon ami, but not from justice." But as the group dispersed, a faint creak echoed from the upper floors, a sound like a door easing shut. Poirot's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "Curieux," he murmured. "The killer is caught, yet the house still speaks. What else does it hide?" Chapter 10. Dawn's resolution. The first rays of dawn pierced the heavy clouds above Abernathy Manor, casting a pale golden glow across the snow-draped Yorkshire hills. The blizzard had finally relented, leaving the estate in a hushed stillness, as if the world itself exhaled after the storm's long tyranny. Within the manor's ancient walls, the air was lighter, though tinged with the bittersweet weight of truth unveiled. Hercule Poirot sat in the drawing room, his small, immaculate figure bathed in the soft light filtering through the velvet drapes. He sipped a steaming cup of hot chocolate, its rich aroma a quiet comfort after the chaos of the night. His mustache twitched with satisfaction, his little gray cells at rest, having unraveled the intricate web of murder that had gripped the house. Captain Hastings, seated across from him, stirred his tea, his face a mix of relief and lingering unease. "Poirot, you've done it again," he said, his voice warm but tinged with awe. "Harlan caught, the murder solved, yet that creak last night, it still gives me the shivers. Could there be more to this?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, his tone calm and reflective. "Mon ami, the creak was perhaps the manor itself settling its secrets, or perhaps a final echo of fear. But the killer, Dr. Harlan, is in chains, and the truth is laid bare. The little gray cells, they never fail." He paused, savoring the chocolate's warmth, his gaze drifting to the window where the melting snow revealed the garden's barren truth. The drawing room, once a stage for suspicion, now held a quieter assembly. Lady Margaret Abernathy stood by the fireplace, her black dress softened by the morning light, her face a portrait of weary resolve. Victor Abernathy, no longer slouched, sat upright, his hands steady as he sipped coffee, a flicker of determination in his eyes. Eliza Thorne, her severe black dress replaced by a softer gray, clutched her locket, her sharp features softened by a newfound peace. Inspector Japp, his notebook tucked away, stood near the door, his cockney brusqueness tempered by a nod of respect toward Poirot. Lady Abernathy spoke first, her voice steady but heavy. "Monsieur Poirot, you have saved this family from ruin. Charles's death, it was a wound, but your truth has given us a chance to heal." She glanced at Victor, her eyes softening. "I inherit the estate now, and I intend to restore its honor." Victor met her gaze, his voice low but firm. "I've been a fool, mother, chasing debts and drink, but no more. I'll make father proud even now." His words carried a sincerity Poirot noted with approval, a sign of redemption born from tragedy. Eliza stepped forward, her locket gleaming in the dawn's light. "Monsieur Poirot, my sister's memory drove me here, to confront Lord Abernathy's cruelty. I sought justice but found only pain. Your work has given me closure." She opened the locket, revealing a faded photograph of a young woman, her smile hauntingly familiar. "I can let her rest now." Poirot inclined his head, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle, the past is a heavy burden, but truth lightens it. You are free to move forward." He turned to Japp, who was adjusting his overcoat, preparing to escort Harlan to the authorities. "Inspector, you have your man. The evidence, the ash, the ink, the tampered clock, the poison vials, it is irrefutable." Jap nodded, a rare grin breaking through his gruff demeanor. You're a marvel, Poirot. Harlan's confessed to the smuggling ring, too. Used the manor as a drop point for years. Abernathy's threats pushed him over the edge. We'll have him locked up tight. He paused, scratching his head. Still, that attic gunshot, the cellar trap. Bloody clever distractions. Poirot's smile was serene. The killer's mind, it is theatrical, Inspector, but no stage can hide from Hercule Poirot. He rose, smoothing his coat, and stepped to the French windows where the snow had melted enough to reveal the garden's truth. No escape tracks, only the manor's secrets laid bare. Evil thrives in isolation, he mused, but truth endures like the dawn. Hastings joined him, his tea forgotten. You know, Poirot, I thought this would be a quiet Christmas, never imagined we'd be solving a murder in a snowbound manor. Makes a chap appreciate your genius. Poirot chuckled softly. Mon ami, the world is never quiet when human hearts are involved. But come, let us prepare to depart. The air is clear and London awaits. As the group dispersed, Lady Abernathy to her study, Victor to his plans, Eliza to her memories, Poirot lingered by the window, his eyes scanning the horizon. The manor, once a prison of deceit, now stood open to the light, its wounds exposed, but healing. Yet the faint creak from the previous night lingered in his mind, a whisper of something unresolved. He dismissed it with a shake of his head, perhaps a loose board, or the house settling after the storm's weight. The sun climbed higher, its rays banishing the last shadows of the winter's grip. Poirot and Hastings gathered their coats, Jap overseeing the staff as they prepared for departure. The manor's grandeur, tarnished by murder, seemed to regain its dignity in the morning light. As they stepped into the hall, a maid approached, her face shy but grateful. "Thank you, sir," she said to Poirot. "We're safe now, because of you." Poirot bowed slightly, his eyes twinkling. "Merci, mademoiselle. It is the order of justice that restores peace." He turned to Hastings, his voice soft but resonant. "The winter killer is no more, mon ami. Let us return to the world." As they stepped outside, the crunch of snow underfoot mingled with the distant call of a bird, a sign of life returning. But as Poirot glanced back at the manor, a faint shadow flickered in an upper window, a trick of the light or something more. He smiled, saying nothing, and walked on.